Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders having a one-on-one meeting overnight with Pope Francis after the Pope had refused to get involved in U.S. politics. They had said at the Vatican it was unlikely they would meet. Sanders campaign manager Jeff Weaver, his first interview since that happened, joins us sitting down with Fox and Friends. Great to see you, Jeff.
Nice to see you, Ed.
How did this come together, and how do you think, I hate to turn it immediately to politics, but we have a primary in 3 days, a lot of Catholic voters here in New York. Is it going to help you?
Well, look, Ed, some things transcend politics. This was an invitation that the senator received from the Vatican. As you know, he speaks a lot about the Pope on the stump. He has great admiration for Pope Francis and Pope Francis's views on moral economy and climate change. And so when the invitation came through, Bernie just felt he couldn't refuse.
But on social issues, you may have some in your party saying, why is he with the Pope when on abortion, same-sex marriage, a whole range of issues, Bernie Sanders disagrees sharply with the Pope?
He does have disagreements on social issues, but, it's similar to when Bernie Sanders went to Liberty University and spoke. You have to find common ground with people so that you can make progress where you can. So you try to find common ground with people. He's worked with Republicans in the Congress for many years. He's worked with John McCain to transform veterans' health care in this country. They don't agree on everything either, but where you can find common ground with people, that's what you do.
The other news overnight, Bernie Sanders releases his tax returns. He had been under pressure, as you know, from Hillary Clinton's campaign to do that. The effective tax rate that he paid in 2014 was 13.5%. Bernie Sanders, your candidate, wants to raise Americans' taxes pretty big in order to pay for his socialist programs. And yet he only paid 13.5% in taxes?
Well, that's the way the tax system is set up. The truth of the matter is that he's one of the poorest members of the U.S. Senate. I think if you compare his income compared to Secretary Clinton's, I think hers was probably much higher.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Well, you lead me to my next question, which is why then, from a political strategist standpoint, didn't you get these returns out sooner? She was making, and we have them on the screen, I think, coming up in a minute here, which is that, her speeches were $200,000–$300,000 a pop. That's more than Bernie Sanders made last year.
No.
Wouldn't that have been good for you to get those out? You see those speeches out there, $200,000–$300,000. Why didn't you get the tax returns out sooner?
Well, the truth of the matter is that what people got yesterday were the schedules. The top 2 pages, the main part of the tax form, that was released back last June. So this really was much ado about nothing. The Washington Post wrote a story about it last June. So these numbers have been out there.
So do you think now Hillary Clinton, she had been demanding he release the tax returns. You demanded that she release the Wall Street transcripts of the speeches. Are they going to come out?
Well, you'll have to ask the Clinton campaign about that. But those transcripts should be released. She received, $225,000 apiece for speaking to Goldman Sachs and other banks, foreign companies, drug companies. What's in those speeches? And we know that in her contract with all these companies, she required them to make a transcript and give it to her. So we know there's a big pile of transcripts. All she has to do is turn them over.
Big primary on Tuesday here in New York. This must win for Bernie Sanders?
No, look, clearly we have to win most of the states going forward. That's just what the math is. But there's no one state we have to win. I think the senator's going to do very, very well here. He's a native son of New York. He's been holding big rallies here in the city and upstate, and Buffalo had huge rallies, Albany. So I think he's going to do quite well here. Do we have to win? It's a proportional system on the Democratic side, unlike the Republican side.
We've got Donald Trump next hour. Last question. He's been out there saying that the system's rigged against him and Bernie Sanders. These are two much different figures. But he says he's getting ripped off on delegates, and so is Bernie Sanders because of superdelegates. Do you have some kinship with Donald Trump on that?
Well, I wouldn't call it kinship. But what I would say is, look, when we get through this process, neither of the Democratic candidates is going to have enough pledged delegates to win. So we're going to go to the convention, and I think we're going to make a very strong case to the superdelegates that Bernie Sanders is the strongest candidate in the fall, beats Donald Trump and all the other Republicans by higher margins than Secretary Clinton. In fact, she loses to Cruz and Kasich in many cases. So I think the superdelegate's going to want to win in November. Bernie Sanders is the candidate to do it.
Thanks. We appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks for joining.